Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I wanted to welcome you to the Higher Level Workforce Management webinar. And this program is something I've been running for the last 5 or 6 years. It's been a great resource for our clients and partners. My name is Erin Kopek, and I'm the Marketing Director for Higher Level. And today we're going to be talking about coaching and developing employees. Russell Williams is our speaker today, and you should all be able to see him hopefully on your webcam. Russ is a certified John Maxwell team coach and a director of Brim Foundation. I'll go ahead and introduce Russ, and then we will get started. Russell Williams is a motivating and encouraging leader who coaches and empowers others to create positive and lasting changes in attitude, mindset, behavior, performance, and leadership. Russell offers masterminds, lunch and learns, workshops, and conferences to help leaders build their influence and performance abilities in the workplace. He is a certified John Maxwell team coach and director of Brim Foundation, which is a nonprofit serving students with learning disabilities and differences. Just a couple quick things before we get started. Russell's going to be communicating with you guys on your chat box. So if you have any questions or if you want to type back a reply, you will see that box at the bottom of your GoToWebinar control panel. So let us know if you have any questions. Otherwise, thank you for joining us. And Russell, I hand it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Erin. Thank you so much for inviting me to do this webinar today. Appreciate everyone who's tuned in to our webinar. It's a cloudy, rainy day here in Illinois, so hopefully everyone's had their coffee and their Coke, their 5 liters of water this morning, and are ready to go. Excited to be with you, excited for the opportunity to serve you this morning. We're going to be talking about coaching and developing your employees, and I think that's a very crucial teaching, a crucial skill that can be formed in a manager or a leader's life in any type of business, nonprofit, for-profit. And so I want you to think about your own career for a moment and how valuable it would be for you to have a boss who's completely invested in your professional aspirations, a coach who's committed to your growth in your company and career. That'd be great, right? Now think about your team. Do you think they want the same thing? Well, of course they do, because developing your employees is not just a good idea, it's imperative. And here's why. Engaging your people's sense of purpose and cultivating mastery is what drives company objectives, profitability, breakthroughs, and market distinctions and reputation. So I'm going to give you a set of coaching practices and development tools to use in your daily conversations with your employees. And these tools will take the heavy lifting off of you and place responsibility squarely with your employees. You know, in baseball, you might coach a player to refine their stance or their grip or their swing, but you don't run the bases for them. So coaching is not doing, and it's not telling people what to do. It's guiding and questioning and prompting and encouraging forward momentum. Most important, it's inspiring people to take ownership of their own careers. So let's take ownership of your career and get started with coaching and developing employees. And first, I'd like to bust some myths. You know, to be successful in implementing the coaching tools and practices I'm going to lay out to you in this webinar, we need to bust some old school myths. And just take a minute and think about the people that you manage. And chances are you can divide them into 3 types. 1, achievers. 2, dependable performers. And 3, everybody else. And looking through your own career lens, you've probably played all 3 of those roles. I know I have. And in hindsight, I can clearly see where a lack of career development played a role in my decision to stay hidden in everyone else's pile or to find the exit from time to time. So let's bust some of these myths. Here's myth number 1. There is no time. This is big. How many times have you heard this? You know, we're constantly challenged to do more with less. So if you start having these short, frequent conversations with people, you might think you'll never get anything done. And what if you're already spending too much time trying to motivate people in the everyone else category? The question of time really comes down to your management style. How much time do you spend putting out fires and checking up on people or taking over other people's projects? You know, I understand the motivation, but the coaching tools and practices we will be exploring today are designed to help you become more collaborative and less directive. And you'll be giving people more autonomy and doing less hand-holding. So myth number one, there's no time. But myth number two is just as apparent. I'll lose my job or I'll lose my team. You know, you might fear that grooming someone so well, you would put them in line for your own job. Or if you get really good at coaching and developing people, you could lose them to another company or department. And that's true. You know, I understand the fear, but growth for your team is growth for you. It's one thing to manage in such a way that you create a revolving door of average talent. That would be a job killer. But it's quite another to manage people towards depth and mastery and to open up doors for people. So the flip side of the myth that you'll lose your job is that you'll actually constantly be creating value for the company and yourself. And then the third myth, myth number three, is development is the employee's responsibility. And that's partly true. Your employees are responsible for driving their careers, but we all need collaborators, people who help us unlock our creativity and purposefulness and the core elements of true job satisfaction. And in my experience, there's no question, career development coaching can turn around a disengaged employee, but it can also accelerate the growth of your high achievers. So right now, I want you to do two things. First, I want you to think of 2 or 3 people you'd love to help coach. So who are the 2 to 3 people who need coaching in your office, on your team? Give me some names. Give me who do you think you would want to focus on first. Think of those 2 or 3 people on your team you'd love to help grow. And these are the people you'll experiment with to develop your coaching skills. And next is to open up your calendar. Where do you have 2 or 3 10-minute chunks of time? Because that's what you're going to start with. Just 2 or 3 10-minute chunks of time that you can block out every week. Now, you may be tempted to say, well, nowhere, I don't have any time like that, but you're creating a habit. It's a new habit, and that needs some protective time and some protected space in your calendar to master it. And so 3 people, 10-minute chunks of time. You got to find the time. Now, coaching your employees is a highly collaborative process, and that collaboration begins with intentionally designing your relationship, making mutual agreements about logistics and what you'll be focusing on. And today we'll be using something called the GROW model, G-R-O-W. And that's going to help you and your employees kickstart the development and goal setting processes. And GROW is an acronym, so you can grab a pen and paper and write down. It means goals, realities, options, and will. GROW. And it has several purposes. First of all, it helps you and your employees clarify their initial goals, assess what's currently happening, and identify potential roadblocks. It also helps your people brainstorm opportunities and resources for growth. And this model offers a great set of open-ended questions which I can send you in an exercise guide. At the end of the session, if you want to request some more resources, I'd be happy to give you some questions that you can use in your own coaching. Now, you can ask these questions in person, or really even to save time, you may want to provide all these questions in advance and simply review and tweak them in your first meeting with your coachees. And so for goals, I might ask a question like, what would you like to achieve? For realities, I might ask, what's derailing your progress towards your goals? You want to encourage your employees to be thoughtful with the responses. For options, I might ask, what possibilities do you see for action? And finally, for will, I might ask, what are your next steps? So your coaching questions are really going to be the what, when, why, where, and how questions. And the next piece of designing a relationship is to agree on the basic logistics. This is really important. You need to agree to the day and time that you're going to meet, how often, and where's the location. And so as a manager, you've previously found some chunks of times. That's what I've asked you before. What are the 2 or 3 10-minute times that you can put on your calendar to do coaching? And if you pick a day and time that works for both of you and stick with it, you're going to create a lot of momentum and you'll save time because you won't be trying to coordinate your schedules constantly. So you really need to be intentional and consistent, keeping that block of time that is exclusively for coaching time with your employees, and don't miss that valuable time with them. And finally, a word about confidentiality. To keep trust high in coaching, your employee's process, that needs to be held in a vault. And like I say in my mastermind groups, it's like being in Vegas. What happens in mastermind stays in mastermind. It's the same in coaching. The details about your conversations are not for anybody else. That shouldn't be shared at all. There should be a trust there. The results, yes, share those. Share those with your team. Share those with your company, but not the details of the conversation. Now I want to give you the 3 cornerstones of the coaching process. Okay, I'm going to type you some notes here. And if I could spell correctly on the chat, it'd be much quicker. So 3 cornerstones is going to help you work smarter and not harder. And cornerstone number 1 is be curious. And at its core, coaching is an inquiry. It's an open-ended question asking that encourages people to reflect and source their own perspectives, some new perspectives and ideas, and really take self-guided action. That's cornerstone number 1, is to be curious about the other person. You really need to focus and be curious. Cornerstone number 2 is let the employee lead. This is not about directive management. So you need to let the employee lead. People do best by really sourcing themselves about the choices they make. They need a lot of autonomy to do that. And your job is to help your employees discover where their goals and their values and their priorities really dovetail with what the organizational goals are, the big picture. And then cornerstone number 3 is coach the whole person. We would love that people would just leave their personal life at home and not bring those things to work. But in coaching, adding value to people and getting the best out of people, that just doesn't happen in the real world. So this means that the work-life merge is not only relevant, but it's crucial to engagement and satisfaction by your employees. Especially in this 24/7, always on world. If someone's challenged by family needs or even maybe a crisis, it impacts their ability to perform in the workplace. So coaching is about coaching the whole person, not just the employed person. So let's rewind and incorporate all 3 of these cornerstones. Number 1, be curious. Number 2, let the employee lead. And number 3, coach the whole person. A little bit about listening. Most of us have a tendency to listen just long enough to offer a solution. I know I do that a lot. And it's a great strength, but in terms of engagement, it can be really counterproductive in coaching. And so I've learned with a little bit more patience and often silence, always keep my cup so that after I ask a question, I take a drink, because we got to have a pause. We got to have silence so your employees will do the talking. And the solutions that they find tend to be really more authentic and durable than in more of a directive management style. And that's what fosters the true alignment with the company objectives, because you want to know what, where, why, when, according to their thoughts and according to what they believe about the company objectives, the company goals, the big picture. You need them to align, and they're going to have to do that themselves. You can't tell them to align with company objectives. You want it to be authentic. You want it to be lasting and durable. So I invite you to record those 3 cornerstones and post them somewhere visible while you're working on these new skills. Now that we've touched on the cornerstones, then we want to anchor your coaching process. So let's take a look at 3 core development conversations, the type of conversations that you're going to have and typically be engaged with your employees. The first one is awareness. That's the first type of conversation that you're going to have. And these conversations, take a look back at the employees' careers and get a current and accurate read on who they are and what they've accomplished, and what inspires them, and what do they do really well. And in turn, the information you gather can be used to guide their goals and their future actions. And although you'll be moving in and out of awareness conversations throughout this coaching process, this coaching time that you have with your employees, that's typically where you begin. You find out where they're at, where they have been, what they think about themselves, a little bit about their limiting beliefs. So here's an example. You might say something like, one of your biggest goals this year was to develop leadership skills. That's something that I've heard you say, we've talked about. Now I'm curious, what does that really mean to you? And after they've answered that, you can continue by questions like, so what strengths do you already have that you can lean on to accomplish that? So you're moving from awareness of what the goals were and what their meaning behind the goals to something more specific and what strengths they might have to accomplish those. And after they've answered those questions, so get into what trips them up. So you'd ask what obstacles, what boundaries do you have? Where do you think you need to develop new skills and strengths? So you're moving into growth, and you'll want to ask follow-up questions so you can clarify the issues. Like I said, I'm going to send you, if you're interested, really questions, 101 questions that you can use in coaching, and you can make these your own. And one of the most important features in awareness conversations is keeping things really open and supporting your employees' process discovering and self-awareness. Your own perspective, your own understanding of career and life and work ethic and things like that, you really need to place those on the back burner, and you really need to open your listening skills and allow people to answer those why, what, when, where questions, and really find value in listening and understanding someone else's perspective and experience. Second, now let's move on to vision conversation. So we've had awareness conversation, and that will go through all coaching conversations. But the second is vision conversations. And these are where you'll help people, connect that self-awareness to the big picture, to identify what are going to be the next steps and the right actions for growth. For example, you may ask, if you were to develop your conflict and collaboration skills, how do you see that impacting the company overall? So you're trying to connect them with, if they change something, if they grow and become better, what difference does that make in the overall company objectives? And again, listen and understand. And then also ask, second of all, ask for an action plan. So are you ready to move on this idea? And you put that, are you ready to put this goal front and center and get started? So you're asking them to take action instead of telling them to take action. And that's going to be more authentic. That's going to be more from their own motivation. And so, and then lastly, very important, ask for accountability. So you may ask, what do you want to be accountable for this week? You've told me what your action plan is, what the step is in order to move forward on this goal. So what is going to be happening this week? You tell me. And so that it's you're owning this and not me, but I'm going to help you be accountable. And so, as you can see, vision conversations are exploratory. They encourage people to come up with the next steps on their own. The third type of conversation are reflection questions. Reflection conversations, these are where we pause. And so my mentor, John Maxwell, talks about experience really doesn't teach anything by itself. It's reflection on our experiences. And so these are really about creating a pause in the action and to anchor their learning and growth results. And it's about assessment and acknowledgement, appreciation, and maybe even celebration. And so later, after someone has done a task, the task has been accomplished, you can join them again, 10-minute session, and say, something like, I've had such incredible feedback about your work project. Everyone's talking about maybe you sharing this and teaching this maybe on a quarterly basis. You've really done something here. You're trying to encourage them. And not just for yourself and your team, but this is for the organization as a whole. You've really done something good here, something productive. And so now, before we lose this learning and jump into what's next, the next step, the next task, let's reflect on what made this possible. What did you learn about your ability to lead that you didn't know before? And what did you learn about yourself? So that's really important, that you don't give feedback as directive, but you allow them, also encourage them, but also allow them to reflect and have that space so that they can pause and they can grow. Many people don't have any time or designate the time. We have time, but we don't designate the time, create the time in order to reflect and learn about what we just did, about our experience. So we move on to the next project and we miss that opportunity to really grow. So here's your opportunity to facilitate that. And you don't have to be superhuman to coach. You just have to be human. And as you engage in these core conversations, you're going to hone your capacity to stick to these cornerstones as well. You're going to, as you do this, you're going to build trust. You're going to inspire learning, expertise, and purposefulness that really is going to benefit you and your people and your companies. What we've covered so far is we've covered an overview of the manager as a coach model. And at the end, I'm going to give you some more resources that I think will help you further your practice in coaching. And also give you a few examples of coaching questions. And as I said at the end, if you want to contact us, ask for coaching questions, I'd like to share those with you. The remainder of this webinar is built around what is called Power Talk practices. And these are the tools you'll use for having short, frequent conversations with the people that you'll manage. And whether you are having quick walk-by conversation or one that's scheduled, you'll be naturally moving through most of the Power Talk practices. So let's take a brief look at each of these practices. The first practice is asking powerful questions. And these are, again, the open-ended questions that help the brainstorming discovery process. And I'm going to touch back on this after I go through all of the Power Talk practices. The second practice is listening. And again, you're going to be using active listening skills to understand the subject of the conversation and to reveal the thoughts and beliefs and identify those underlying issues or opportunities. The next power talk practice is challenge. That's the process of helping your employee think beyond an issue or to see perspective and head into bolder territory. So you're going to challenge them to grow. The fourth practice is action. This is what they will do and by when. So we've talked about this somewhat, but you're going to need to make sure that you always practice these and turn to actions. Your employee needs to generate their own steps and their own actions. And then the fifth power talk practice is that coaching has to happen with accountability. That means holding your employees responsible for taking actions and meeting their deadlines. And finally, the sixth and last of the power talk actions that you need to practice is feedback. And so together, you're going to review progress and take a look at success and challenges, what's working and what isn't, and what's next. And you'll be using most of the power talk practices at some level in every single conversation. And these practices will show up naturally once you do it, once you practice. It's like everything else. It's like learning to ride a bike, learning to swing a bat at a ball, learning to do a cartwheel. You've got to practice these, and then it becomes much more natural. Your conversations will become much more natural as you practice these. And if you're feeling like you're losing track of the focus, you simply really need to pause and say, okay, I think we're drifting off topic a little bit. That happens a lot in these natural conversations. So just pause and say, and you need to remember who's guiding. You're guiding, you're not directing. And at first you'll have to consciously remind yourself to use these practices. But after a while, it really becomes second nature. Once you practice these over and over again, you won't be thinking about the steps. So let me go back and talk about each one of these, or a couple of these, in detail. First one, I talked about asking powerful questions. That really is the key to coaching. It's all in the question. And those questions need to be open-ended. And again, begin with who, what, when, where, why, and how. And asking these kinds of questions triggers your employees to source their own ideas and solutions. And questions like, do you like your new office? Or are you enjoying your work with Mary? Now, those are closed-ended questions, can be answered with a simple yes or no. So closed-ended questions do really little to encourage conversation or self-awareness. Likewise, when you feel you're about to give your advice or offer criticism, you can pause and turn those statements into open-ended questions instead. So if we were going to reframe those questions, we ask and make them open-ended questions. For example, what do you think about your new office? Or how are things going with Mary? These questions, those questions being asked that way, what do you think about your new office? How are things working with Mary? Those questions encourage a little bit more thoughtfulness and draw a little bit more information. Those are coaching questions. And here's the most important thing to notice about future focus feedback. So the action step that we need to practice was feedback. And we can't change the past. We can really only influence the future. So I want to give you a couple thoughts and why focusing on the future is much more effective. Research shows that when we highlight how people went wrong, it builds defensiveness because it puts the spotlight on mistakes and shortcomings. But future focus feedback sidesteps this personal critique in favor of teasing out what's possible and what might be improved in the future. So ultimately, this feedback is more efficient because the ideas and solutions your employees generate on their own tend to be adopted and with more of their commitment. It's the kind of feedback that comes from leadership and inspires leadership. And so you really need to see yourself less as a manager that gives directives and more of a coach that builds and inspires leadership in your employees, in your teams, and even up. We can talk about it on a different occasion, but leading up to the people that you report to. I do a lot of that coaching too. And so a couple things I want to do before we do in today, and maybe take some questions. I want to talk about maintaining the coaching cycle, because this is all about intentionality and consistency and doing something new and learning a new habit. And so I want to talk about working through blind spots and resistance, and this is really important. Employee development coaching is all about change, and change for most of us, if not all of us, is very hard. And you're going to encounter some kind of resistance or pushback during the process. It's important to say that not everyone wants to be coached, and not everybody is coachable. That's so true. So it would be a mistake to make coaching mandatory for all your employees. In fact, that strategy will backfire every single time. Instead, start with people that you think are ready and allow the benefits to percolate through the team naturally. Oddly, someone who expresses readiness for coaching may not be coachable. You need to ask your employees to do something, maybe like a self-assessment. And if you don't have self-assessment tools, I can provide you with those, samples of those. That's where you're going to use some information to gather kind of a test for coachability. And if you sense your employee isn't coachable, for instance, on this test or some type of quiz or even an interview, you get really one-word answers or answers like, I don't know, that's a cue. That's a cue that they're not ready for a challenge. They're not ready to be stretched. Or maybe it's time to table the work until they're ready to participate. Never give up on anybody, but maybe the timing is not right for a coaching relationship. So now let's focus on the coachable employees. Even with your coachable people, the first objective will most likely, you'll hear, why? Why are we doing this? Are things really that bad? What am I doing wrong? They're going to make me defensive. And for your high achievers, you can assure them that this is very much the opposite. And what you're up to is really accelerating their growth and opportunities for advancement. For those who may be underperforming, give them some future-focused assurances. Like, I want to make sure we're using your strengths and we're finding ways to help you be more successful. And you get things rolling with your employee coaching program. As you do this, what else is likely to happen? Well, pretty much everything that's already happening. People are going to continue to show up late, forget meetings, missing deadlines, not participating full out, gossiping about other team members. So what do? Well, here's some rules of thumb, and some of this is review. One, don't take it personally. Instead, be curious. Try to focus on the problem, not the people. And number two, ask those open-ended questions to each and every issue or objection. If you feel criticism, then you need, if you feel like you're about to criticize, it's about to leave your lips, you need to pause and turn those into open-ended questions. Again, habit forming, you're all going to get this. You just need to practice. And number three, give people time to vent without interruption or feedback. Sometimes people just get swept up in the moment. They get swept in the project. Things go from bad to worse, and you just need to let them steam. Let it go. It may be something that they're bringing from home. It has nothing to do with work. It's where people come from, and we're all that way. But let them vent some. Just listen. Be their friend, but also be their coach. Along those lines, here are two more coaching tips. Acknowledge, but don't commiserate. The worst thing we can do as coaches is to agree with people's limiting beliefs. This is happening to me because this is what happened to me at my last job. I can't do that. That's beyond me. Why don't you ask somebody else? Don't affirm them in those. Just listen and acknowledge, reassure, nod your head, and say with as much compassion as possible, okay, I got it. I see what you're saying. And then make a plan together to move forward. And one final piece of resistance I want to deal with is disengagement. Your employee shows up to your coaching session, sits back, doesn't offer much in the way of conversation. They avoid eye contact. They give one-word answers. They sit with their arms folded, or they really have some very dismissive physical gestures and features. And, in the coaching world, this is what we call geography. And as you've probably heard, the body doesn't lie. When people are engaged and listening, they tend to lean forward, and they nod their head, and they grapple with things with their hands. And some people might even, get up and pace, and because people think better on their feet. So one thing you can do is play back the physical posture or movement, and ask your employees, what does this mean? And that will often crack things open, so you can get to the root of the issue. And with a little practice, you'll push through resistance rather than that derailing you. So hang in there, remind people frequently of that big picture, and keep things moving. So in conclusion, stripped down to the essence, coaching is about shifting mindsets that leads to a change in behavior. That's what we're trying to do, a change in behavior. It's that serious, and it's that productive for higher performance. And it's at its best, coaching always creates an environment in which positive behavioral changes leads to improvement in the team and organizational results. And here's what's curious. Despite the fact that coaching is in wide use across the corporate landscape, we often view it as a remedial tool to correct somebody's performance. But I truly believe that good coaching is about creating a high performance culture, not managing a low performance one. So let's say you're going to leave this webinar today committed to implementing a coaching program. You're intent on sharing your experience and results with leadership, and the hopes of generating really company-wide adoption with your own coaching and a coaching culture. And that's fantastic. Natural aptitude goes a long way, but I encourage you to take this further. Coaching is a management skill that requires devoted energy to improve. So consider enrolling in maybe a formal coaching training program. Training and certification like the John Maxwell team will give you confidence and credibility really to make your case. And if there's one thing to take away from this course, remember, people are really dying to be coached. They're dying to be valued. They're dying to be supported. So listen, go out and practice. Fall down, get back up, do it again. And you'll not only transform the careers of the people that you coach, but you're going to transform your own career too. You're going to grow, and you're going to be a person of value that adds value to other people, and you're really going to get the best out of people. Coaching is a fantastic practice. It's a practice that you can learn. It's a practice that can be resourced. It's a practice that entails intentionality and consistency, but really anybody with an open heart and open mind that wants to see people improve, that attitude can make you successful in coaching. So thank you for tuning in with me on this webinar, and I wanted to open up to questions. You may be interested in resources, or you have a question in particular to a situation or coaching opportunity. So does anybody have any questions? And Aaron, I'm going to ask you to help me with these two.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Russell. Great information. So I actually have a question. This has been brought up, with different people that I know and within our company. What advice do you have for managers that are maybe trying to coach an employee, and the employees, they're open to coaching, but they are a little bit more reserved and they're not willing to open up right away? How do you, what ideas do you have to allow that employee to open up and feel comfortable speaking?
Yeah, you may not know why they're not opening up. It may be something, it may very well be something in the management style of the leader. Typically, it's something that an employee brings from another company. Not only when we hire, recruit, bring in a new person, we have brought in their last company culture and their last company management style. So this may be very new for them. And that's okay. You're trying to introduce growth to them. And so I think you need to focus on those questions about awareness again. Awareness questions that find out what do they believe is their limiting beliefs? Where do those come from? What could you do to help them achieve a higher level of performance? And really let them, answer the questions, get to know them better. But Aaron, it might just be a matter of developing the relationship first before focusing on the future and matching that person's abilities and what they're being asked to do to the broader goals and objectives of the company. So take the time. It really is relationship building for people that don't know each other that well. And just be comfortable with maybe some answers or some revelations that in some settings and most settings may be very uncomfortable. Just, have that mindset that you're here to listen, that you're here to help the other person become better. And that might tie into really some personal things. As I said at the beginning, it may not be all about the professional development, but it may be something personal that person needs to let go, that person needs to open up. And if they know that you are willing to listen and that there's a trust relationship that's not going further than the door about their details, they're more likely going to open up. And then you can start steering and guiding to focus more on the professional development for that person. But you very well may need to hear some things that will surprise you, but about personal and professional experience before they came to the job.
Okay, great. Thank you. If anyone else has any questions, please feel free to type those out in your chat box right now, and we can work on getting those answered for you.
So when I started in coaching, and I again did formal training with the John Maxwell team, which is one of the many great organizations, international worldwide organizations to develop coaching, speaking, facilitating skills. John Maxwell is a prolific writer and speaker internationally, really, around the world. He is seen as the #1 expert in leadership development. But I also, studied. I also read. There was a couple resources that I wanted to give people. I'll just type them in the comment. There's a wealth of knowledge about coaching in a book called Coaching for Performance by John Whitmore. That one is more like a Bible of coaching. Can be found on Amazon. If you really want to take this seriously and dig into it. But I would start with other resources that might be a little bit more, very small resource books. There is an organization called Center for Leadership, and it's the website is www.ccl.org, and so the training. There's, resources, books, podcasts. There's trainers that will come to you develop your leadership resources. That's one of my go-tos for leadership development. They've got a fine starter book called Becoming a Leader Coach. And Becoming a Leader Coach, it's a step-by-step guide to developing your people. It's like $16 on Amazon or $16 from their website. Definitely would start with a resource like that and then get into more of the coaching for performance by John Whitmore. I see a couple questions. Where can we get self-assessment tool? So I do have those resources. You can Google those resources. Again, the Center for Leadership Development, that www.ccl.org will have some self-assessment tools. Erin, you said there was a way that we could maybe send some exercise guides like that would have a self-assessment tool. Is that correct?
Yes. One of us, we can follow up after the presentation and send out those resources.
Yeah. So I can give you a sample of a self-assessment tool, and then I would encourage you to look in these other resources. Another question, does relationships with employees facilitate them to open up? I hear you saying, does the relationship that you have with them, maybe is that maybe on a personal level? Does that help them open up? Yeah, absolutely. A trust has to be built, and people don't trust just on a one-out coaching session. That's developed over time, and so you need to have that forefront in your knowledge that you're building a trust relationship. And as they see that's your intention and that you're consistent with keeping information that is important, personal, in the room, and that you're there to help them, and that you're there to connect with them. Didn't talk a lot about connecting with people, but that really is a key in relationship building and coaching development, is that you find out what you have in common, that you value them, and that it's really all about not sharing information with them, but listening and them sharing information with you. If that doesn't answer your question, please be more specific and ask me another question. Yeah, I can send you those 101 questions for coaching. They're broken down into the different types of questions that we talked about today, so I'll be happy to send that to you. Why would you be interested in, next question, why would you be interested in wanting to know about the individual's personal life than going over these steps with what the job is for? Again, you want to connect with people. You want to build a trust. If you're only interested in the person's value as an employee, then that's as far as they are going to go. And they're going to have issues and experiences outside the workplace that's definitely going to impact their employee performance. So you should be interested in the whole person. That's a very different in management directive styles, but in coaching development styles, you want to develop the whole person, because really we are not divided people. I've got a family with married with 2 small children. I bring those experiences and thoughts, whether they're celebrations for me personally or whether they're trouble. I bring those to work. And so you should not just open up to listening to those, but that may be the boundaries or barriers of someone dealing with a personal issue, that once they have some growth in that area, it allows them to grow in the professional development area. So I really think it's important that, yeah, you should definitely have boundaries of what you might be comfortable talking about. And you may need to consistently steer people and put them back on the path of the intentions of the coaching session. But I still think that you should be interested in adding value to someone, whether it's personal or professional. I hope that answers your question.
All right, great information. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Russell, again for participating. This was some great information. We will be following up after the webinar this morning with the information for you guys and the resources. And if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out. You could reach me at hello@higherlevel.com. That email goes directly to me if you have any further questions. And thank you again for spending your morning with us, everyone.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day. Have a great day, and we'll talk soon.